Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, great Biafrans and lovers of freedom. This is Radio Biafra HAUSA-SERVICE coming to you through the auspices of Radio Biafra London. My name is Mazi, Jonathan Chinedu from Alu province of Biafra London. We are here live and direct. Today is the 23rd day of May 2024. Therefore, I welcome each and every one of you to welcome your friends and well-wishers onto this hallowed platform, because this is where it all started. This is our rallying point. This is where we worship. You can be hearing us from FM or on FM frequency modulation in many parts of Biafra land, CHK 102.1. Also, we are live and direct on satellite, free-to-air satellite. You can be receiving us here. Therefore, if you go to social media like Facebook, you can also have multiple choices of listening to this hallowed platform. You can download IPOB Community Radio. IPOB Community Radio is a very low data consuming application through which you can be listening to this all important revolutionary radio, because this is where we dispense the reality. The reality does not lie. Therefore, as you may know, today is second to the last day of our series on our commemoration. Remember, we are on May, and it is our month of commemoration that will peak on the 30th May, which will be lockdown, total lockdown in Biafra land. And we commend the institutions that are doing everything possible in order to shift any event they have. We commend them. That is how we should be. We have to be organized and be disciplined, because what we are doing, the commemoration, is for all of us. There is no family in Biafra land that didn't lose one or two people or more during the war. There is no family in Biafra land. And there are families that we are wiped off, cleaned off of this planet Earth. Therefore, why shouldn't we remember them? And those that died before and even continue dying till today. Look at somebody like Ikonso and many others. Therefore, you have no excuse not to respect the 30th day of May, which is going to be a total lockdown, sit at home in Biafra land. Therefore, without taking any much time, because I have to also reiterate, on Sunday, which will be the last day for this series, please, I want people, you write down your questions concerning the historical aspects of our life that has been taught here, or any other, because that day Dr. Ukachi will speak less and we take questions, please. Therefore, on Sunday, you have to, bring up any question you have concerning what happened to us, so that it can be answered. Therefore, without taking much time, I will bring in our dear brother Mazi, Dr. Justice Ukachi Lois, in order to take the podium. Mazi, please go on. The platform is yours. Go on, please.
Good evening, everyone. Mazi Jonathan, thank you for this wonderful invitation to speak on this hallowed platform, which, as I said before, is because Nnamdi Kanu has made this supreme sacrifice in a way. All his courage has made it possible for all this to happen. And of course, your staunch IPOB members has sustained this hallowed platform, which has given us a voice throughout the whole world to go back and research and have a look of what happened to us as a people. So we have talked about several aspects, but today we're going to lead you from where we had the January 4-5 meeting in Aburi in Ghana until the actual declaration of Biafra. So we got the whole of January to May of 1967 to discuss. Remember, it's approaching 1 year since the massacring started of that year, 66. So therefore, we're taking it in stages, bite sizes, to try and relate to our people exactly what has happened. Today, I spent some time talking about the Aburi Accord, which was an accord, like a concord, an agreement, which then became a discord, which became a disagreement. And as a result of it, it was the last straw that broke the camel's back. And as a result of it, being Nigeria's last chance, remember, Aburi is in Ghana. You can't sit down and talk about your country with every member of the same country in the same place, because if you're from the eastern part, you're not safe. So the actual meeting had to be held in Accra. It had to be held near Accra, capital of Ghana, in Aburi. So that, therefore, being the last chance, what then happened was very disgraceful, because they unraveled and untangled, denied, lied, so that the people of the eastern region have no other choice but to say, what else can we do? So this is what we're going to explore today. So fasten your seatbelts. We go as quickly as we can. And I also need to say that of all the lectures we had so far, I thank you all for listening. And if you have any burning questions you want to ask, what we're going to do is on this Sunday, 26th, we're going to not talk a lot about the Biafran War, which was supposed to begin the discussion. I think that's a totally different topic, because we can talk about Biafran War for so long. So I'm going to reserve that day to maybe a brief summary of what the main topics we talked about, and then open up for people who have had some questions they want to ask. So I ask you to make it brief. Just come to the table with your question, and we do our best to try and answer them. We may not get the answer you're expecting, but we'll do our best to try and answer those questions, because it's important that as you hear something, we encourage you to interrogate it, ask and say, does this make sense? Why are you saying this? Where do you get information from, and so on and so forth? So our people will be equipped, and I want people to also go and read and research and find out more about. So we can't talk about the whole thing in the program. There's a lot to actually discuss. So therefore, as I said, let me be guided, and so let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. You see, so today's topic then is about Aburi. It's very, very important, because if Aburi was sorted out, perhaps lots of people would not have died, and they're still dying today. As a result of Aburi failure, Nigeria became, remember, there are people being killed before Aburi, but Aburi was supposed to find a way out. So when it failed, the land became soaked with even more blood than there was shed before Aburi. So let's try and see if we can understand what actually happened. So let me begin. So, as I said, when they finished Aburi, there was a celebration. Ojukwu was able to go back, and the plan was that Gowan, who's now going to be the chairman of the SMC, Supreme Military Council, is to announce to the Nigerian people what the whole thing was about, what was achieved, and so on. And of course, those in the eastern part of the country were anxious to hear from Ojukwu. We told you not to go, so but you wanted more peace, more time. So how did it go? Oh, it was was a successful meeting, provided all the discussions was agreed upon, and would be okay. So he celebrated. He said he hoped, the war is avoided. Nobody wants war. But the Aburi agreement, if you like, if someone turns their back on it or try to mess up with it, then we're in big trouble, because it's like the last resort. So when they came back from Ghana, Gowan, as I mentioned last meeting, the permanent secretaries, some of them who were actually present in the meeting, had a change of heart. They say, well, we don't think I need to raise a memo. Gowan said, go and raise a memo. That's Akin's way. Go and raise a memo. Tell us what it is you're concerned about. So that one went and raised a memo, and they talked about it, and so on. They say, well, you're giving too much to you're giving away. The country is going to be divided. Is the country united today? No. The country is going to be divided. We shouldn't have given so much to Juku. Hey. So they brought out the memo, and as a result, 10 days later, after the Aburi, when they returned, Gowan went on the radio and made an announcement. There was a publication in Nigeria called Nigeria 1966. Instead of publishing the minutes, verbatim minutes of the actual Aburi Accord, so the Nigerian government decided they need to write publish a booklet about what has happened to Nigeria. So Nigeria 66 is what it's titled. They gave the federal side, if you like, Nigerian side, say what happened to Nigeria. Actually, they gave the northern version of everything that has happened since the January coup. So, it is therefore a remarkable exercise in distortion. They distorted the picture. This is really not what you want to be hearing 10 days after Aburi. So at that time, that caused absolute mayhem in the East, because they say, Ojukwu, you told us, you guys had a meeting in Aburi, so what's this we're hearing? So Ojukwu protested and phoned Gowan, said, Jack, what's going on? We agreed in Aburi that we shouldn't publish any more, official versions of what actually happened, because if we do that, lots of people are hurt, particularly in the East, and some festering with anger. So Gowan said, no. It was a leak. So the information was leaked. But later on, Ojukwu learned that far from it being a leak, this booklet, which Gowan says is a leak, appeared simultaneously at the same time in London, New York, and other country capitals, in the embassies, the cocktail parties they had launched by the Nigerian government. So it wasn't a leak, it was a deliberate ploy to distort the goings on of 66. I think they're so scared about the killings of the Igbos. They didn't want everybody to know what actually happened. So they wrote their own version and distorted around the embassies to buy their time. So when again, Ojukwu then, they phoned again, but unknown to Gowan, all this conversation was being recorded. So again, when the Ojukwu phoned him, having found that this particular thing he said was a leak, has gone round to all the embassies, Gowan dropped the phone on him. So it was a heated anger conversation. So Gowan dropped the phone on him. And unknown to Gowan, this was actually recorded on the Ojukwu side. So that was really the beginning of the problem which they had with Aburi. So Ojukwu, hearing what they've said in the federal side, say, how can this be happening? What am I going to do and tell the people who are clamoring for us to go away from Nigeria? So it was on the 26th of January, Gowan had a press conference after publishing Nigerian's version of all the killings and the coups and so on, which is distorted. So on the 26th of January, Gowan then had a press conference in Lagos about the Aburi Accord. So the text of the press, he said, of the press conference appeared to be based not on the minutes, Okay, it didn't. What he talked about in the press conference was not based on the minutes, which is supposed to, about the final agreement at Aburi, but rather on the secretaries who were complaining and counter arguing whether they should adopt the Aburi or not. So there was actually a change of what was decided. So there was actually publishing a criticism of the document which the permanent secretaries was brought out. The permanent secretaries were there in the capacity as secretaries. They were not the highest authority in the country. The highest authority in the country was the SMC, the Supreme Military Council, which is constituted by the governors of the East, the West, Midwest, and the North, plus Gowan, who's supposed to be the supreme. They were not the highest authority in the country. The highest authority in the country was the SMC, the Supreme Military Council, which is constituted by the governors of the East, the West, Midwest, and the North, plus Gowan, who's supposed to be the supreme. They were not the highest authority in the country. The highest authority in the country was the SMC, the Supreme Military Council, which is constituted by the governors of the East, the West, Midwest, and the North, plus Gowan, who's supposed to be the supreme. They were not the highest authority in the country. The highest authority in the country was the SMC, the Supreme Military Council, which is constituted by the governors of the East, the West, Midwest, and the North, plus Gowan, who's supposed to be the supreme. They were not the highest authority in the country. The highest authority in the country was the SMC, the Supreme Military Council, which is constituted by the governors of the East, the West, Midwest, and the North, plus Gowan, who's supposed to be the supreme. They were not the highest authority in the country. The highest authority in the country was the SMC, the Supreme Military Council, which is constituted by the governors of the East, the West, Midwest, and the North, plus Gowan, who's supposed to be the supreme. They were not the highest authority in the country. The highest authority in the country was the SMC, the Supreme Military Council, which is constituted by the governors of the East, the West, Midwest, and the North, plus Gowan, who's supposed to be the supreme. They were not the highest authority in the country. The highest authority in the country was the SMC, the Supreme Military Council, which is constituted by the governors of the East, the West, Midwest, and the North, plus Gowan, who's supposed to be the supreme. They were not the highest authority in the country. The highest authority in the country was the SMC, the Supreme Military Council, which is constituted by the governors of the East, the West, Midwest, and the North, plus Gowan, who's supposed to be the supreme. They were not the highest authority in the country. The highest authority in the country was the SMC, the Supreme Military Council, which is constituted by the governors of the East, the West, Midwest, and the North, plus Gowan, who's supposed to be the supreme. They were not the highest authority in the country. The highest authority in the country was the SMC, the Supreme Military Council, which is constituted by the governors of the East, the West, Midwest, and the North, plus Gowan, who's supposed to be the supreme. They were not the highest authority in the country. The highest authority in the country was the SMC, the Supreme Military Council, which is constituted by the governors of the East, the West, Midwest, and the North, plus Gowan, who's supposed to be the supreme. They were not the highest authority in the country. The highest authority in the country was the SMC, the Supreme Military Council, which is constituted by the governors of the East, the West, Midwest, and the North, plus Gowan, who's supposed to be the supreme. They were not the highest authority in the country. The highest authority in the country was the SMC, the Supreme Military Council, which is constituted by the governors of the East, the West, Midwest, and the North, plus Gowan, who's supposed to be the supreme. They were not the highest authority in the country. The highest authority in the country was the SMC, the Supreme Military Council, which is constituted by the governors of the East, the West, Midwest, and the North, plus Gowan, who's supposed to be the supreme. Hello?
Yes, Mazi, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, please go on. There was a little technical glitch. Please go on.
I'm not sure where I left that. So I was saying the unraveling of the Aburi Accord. That the first thing was that there was a conference, a press conference in Lagos on the 26th of January, which Gowan held. And he said, because of the advice of the secretaries, that it appears that he's been the power which is supposed to be wielding has been eroded. What it meant is that the members of the Supreme Military Council collectively make a decision and Gowan as the chair, and these are the ones who are helping to run the country, not one person dictating to all the regions. So number one, then there was a disagreement that the army, and what they said in Aburi, that the army should be ruled over by the supreme, by a commander in chief, which is not what they decided. The second one is that the military area commands are supposed to be autonomous and independent, and but Gowan says no, they're supposed to be looked after by the military headquarters, and the military headquarters report directly to him, which is again not what was decided. So the conference Aburi had agreed on no such thing, basically. So on the third part is that regarding those who have abandoned their properties, they have lost their means of income, those are the refugees who have flooded into the eastern part. He says that the financial secretaries, had to meet and told the financial secretaries that the principle of revenue allocation should not be discussed. Now, hang on. If the people who are going to meet to find out how to best rehabilitate them are not supposed to talk about, revenue allocation, so how are they going to be compensated? How are they going to be maintained? So this is really some of the major headaches. So those were the form of some fiscal relief, and it is vital to enable the East to cope with the nearly 2 million, 1.8 million refugees. So Gowan is saying they're not supposed to be talking about the finance. The financial secretaries are not meant to be discussing finance or their revenue allocation. Then the next bit is about payment of salaries. And so the decision to continue to pay salaries to the end of financial year, the 31st of March, does not take into account the economic factors which are then linked to it. So basically, it's trying to pull back and not support the workers. Who are these workers? So, for example, the railway workers who abandoned their job and ran away for their dear lives, about 12,000 of the railway workers alone, no one has paid them since they fled from their jobs. So to now turn around and said they're not supposed to be paid any of their salaries, and because there's economic factors which says you shouldn't be doing this. So this was a bigger headache for the East because Ojukwu was supposed to pick up the tab. So the decision should therefore be reconsidered, says Gowan, how much to pay them. They're supposed to be paid to the end of March. Imagine you got a family, you got children, you got bills to pay, and you run away from the north, say in October. No one has paid you anything. We're now talking January, February. So the plan in Aburi was for you to start paying them so that they can sustain their families and so on. So so those are the things that was beginning to cause some problem. So then the next thing from the the next thing about the Aburi Accord is the Constitution of Nigeria was also mentioned, and the idea was to reconvene a constitutional conference so that people would then decide how we're going to rule or manage Nigeria. So Gowan said he has dropped the constitutional. This permanent secretary should no longer, if they should not stick to their previous recommendation and advice that the ad hoc constitution conference should stand adjourned indefinitely. and that the immediate political program announced to the nation on the 30th of November, in other words, looking at the ways in which they can now cohabit, live together, that would no longer be implemented. It's now suspended for the time being. So then, by the time Gowan's press conference 26th of January has finished, with the small print, which appeared there appears to be very little left of the Aburi agreement. So in other words, you wonder whether he was actually there at the agreement, at the Aburi, whether he signed or did he not sign. So that is where the sticking point, where the problem began, because he was there, and now the press conference he gave seemed to be, reneging, literally dropping all the major salient points, which was designed to assuage or to calm tempers and nerves in the East. But because of the way Gowan went about it, Ojukwu now began to suspend and suspect him. So it's like the Ojukwu couldn't believe his ears. So he had to get the actual printout of the press conference. And you look at your glasses, you clean the glasses, you rub your eyes, you wash your eyes, and make sure what you're reading is actually what you heard. So Ojukwu then have to read the transcript again of the press conference, which was released. And so Ojukwu said he refused to believe that such is what Gowan was doing. Little attempt whatsoever was made, to understand the pressures Ojukwu was under. As far back as the massacres, previous autumn, Ojukwu was telling people to return back. That is the May one. Then when more killing grew louder and people started pouring back, his pressure was, Ojukwu, pull us out of Nigeria. He's gone to Aburi to talk peace. Georgia is better than war. And after all the agreements they made, Gowan had started turning them over, turning them on its head, which is very, very sad. So the refugee problem smoothly, it's as though the people who are suffering has been allowed, it's like you built a flyover over the problem. The refugees there, you build a flyover to drive over them, and they bypass them, and not actually allowing them to have some rehabilitation. So the problem was festering. So the question of paying on the salaries for thousands of corporate employees and, of course, civil servants, and the questions whether their families are, what they are doing, whether they ate or not eating, and so on, is still a burning topic in the East. So Ojukwu had fought to minimize people asking East to pull out, and now Aburi seemed to be unraveling. So that is really the main problem. So when Ojukwu then came to do his own press conference, he said, "On Aburi we stand." I read that last time we met. We discussed it. So "On Aburi we stand" became a slogan in the East, because if you don't apply Aburi, then how else are we going to cohabit, live together? So, and then Ojukwu said, in addition, if it would not be in a position to attend any further Supreme Military Council meetings, especially if they're held in Nigeria, because although they called it in Benin, but there's still Nigerian soldiers present there. So Ojukwu's safety is not guaranteed. So what's the point in having more meetings when the one you had in Ghana has not been honored? So you can see where we're drifting. So if Aburi's agreement, Ojukwu said, are not implemented, so he mentioned by the 31st of March, he says, and I quote, "I would have no alternative but to feel free to take whatever measure may be necessary to give effect in the region," that's the eastern region, "to those agreements." So Ojukwu, at this stage, was getting so polarized, pulled apart on one side by those who wanted to pull away, and Nigerians say, "No, you can't do this because we do what Gowan is in charge now. He's the boss, so you should listen to him and just go along, play along." So let me repeat what Ojukwu said. He said, "If the Aburi agreement are not fully implemented by 31st of March, I shall have no alternative but to feel free to take whatever measures may be necessary to give effect this region those agreements. So that is a bombshell from the people point of view, because they quoted this and say, well, on the 31st, the press start gathering. On the 31st of August, they say, aha, this means Ojukwu is going to secede. And they got, if it's this present day journalists, and they had their laptop, they would have typed secession date 31st of March. So, but they don't have laptop these days, it was a typewriter. So they're already composing their headline, because they're going to come to Enugu to hear Ojukwu on the 31st of March. So that is really where everything is heading to. So, so when the 31st came, everybody gathered in Enugu for a press conference. As I said, with their headlines, Ojukwu is declaring a secession, Nigeria, one Nigeria, goodbye one Nigeria. They all had their headings. But then Ojukwu told them, as they were listening, that what he's going to do is to issue a revenue edict appropriating all federal revenue collected in the East as a means of paying for the rehabilitation program. What am I talking about? What he's saying is, on the day they thought he was going to declare secession from the East are pulling away. So he told them what he'd rather do and not precipitate war is to, from then on, to collect taxes from the East and use it to rehabilitate the people who need to be paid, the people whose family need to be looked after. So it was a bit of a shock to the to the press people, because if we carried on, there would have been, it's a way of, if you like, avoiding a total economic collapse in the eastern region, because they have got an increase of 17% in their population. They've got schools, hospitals, everything to maintain the new influx. They need jobs, you need to find jobs for them, pay the salaries. So he says the best thing to do to avoid war is the edict, which means a financial edict, which means you collect tax and use that tax instead of paying to the federal purse. You use it, which the federal is supposed to pay in the first place, is going to use that money collected to maintain the rehabilitation program in the East. So what are these taxes? If you're forming a new company, there's a registration company edict, the revenue collection edict, and the court appeal edict. Those are the edicts. The interesting thing is that you would have thought Eastern Nigeria being the area where oil is produced, he would also collect the oil revenues. No. Ojukwu, in this explanation, so he did not impose economic sanction on the oil for oil revenues, because the revenues from the oil are actually paid in Lagos anyway, so he couldn't collect those. So you can understand the situation. But as soon as he declared this edict, and they were expecting to declare secession, Gowan responded again by imposing a blockade and say you can't collect the taxes in the East and keep it and not bring it to the federal side. So Gowan imposed an economic blockade. So you can imagine each time Ojukwu takes a step to be as peaceful as he can, Gowan adds more pressure. So he imposed an economic blockade on the East. Things like post office, telex, telephone, they're all relayed through Lagos from the East. You're no longer allowed to do that. And he's sending the Navy to make sure that they're not going to ship outside either. So you can imagine everything was now heading for a head-on confrontation. So we have a blockade on the eastern part, and it became very, very difficult became very, very difficult. The eastern, remember they're all in regions those days. It became difficult for the people of the eastern region to manage their finances and so on. So it looked good, and first of all, Gowan decided that having imposed economic blockade, there's a Decree 8. Remember, the Aburi decided to repeal, that was cancelled every single decree made since January 1966. So all the military decrees were supposed to be repealed. Instead of honoring the agreement, Gowan is now adding some more decree. So he now brought out Decree number 8. Just remind you that Decree number 34, the Northerners said that Aguirre was using it to dominate the whole federation when it was supposed to be a decree to unify the whole country. They wanted their region to be autonomous and independent and not be unified. So here Ojukwu is asking for them to recognize the union, the actual region need to be more, autonomous, especially after the massacres that was going on. But they said, no, you must stay inside Nigeria. Not that they're putting out, but they have to be controlled by the center. So as a result, a Decree number 8 was then issued. And what they've done was they decided to fine-tune the Aburi. And Decree 8 was very clever. When it came out, it contained the minutes of Aburi. Yeah? So everything that Aburi said, he also said, yeah, we're going to do that. So it looked good, because more autonomy to the regions, yes, we agree with that. You're supposed to become virtually autonomous and bringing back the power within the Supreme Military Council rather than what Gowan was saying. So everyone was saying, hang on, this is looking good. And then, but the only problem with the Decree number 8, so there was some small print, okay? What they've done is, here's the minute, because when Gowan reneged and it didn't mention what has happened, remember when he had his press conference, Ojukwu started playing the gramophone record of what was actually discussed in Aburi. So people became wiser. So you can't be imposing what you think happened when in fact we hear the actual 9 gramophone recordings of the event, so you can't lie. So then they went back and changed and made Decree 8 part and parcel of Aburi finding, except that they smuggled in some small prints inside it. Now, this small print, as they say, devil is in the detail. They smuggled in the small print, except for this was so skillfully worded, that it looked fairly harmless until you read it a second time. Again, you bring your glasses out, wipe it and clean it, and have a good look, have a good read, and make sure you're not missing anything. So when you see the extra provisions reduce the main paragraphs, in other words, they smuggled in some information, some sentences, which, although it looks like the Aburi Accord, but the new sentences, in a way, leads to its cancellation. So this is what was found. The extra clauses was to the effect that the regional governors, listen to this, could not exercise their powers so as to impede or prejudice the authority of the federation, or endanger the continuance of the federal government. So they say you can have your autonomy, that's okay. The only problem is that you're not allowed to do anything that will block or prejudice the authority of the federal federation, even though you're autonomous, or endanger the continuance of the federal government. You're not allowed to do in such a way the federal government doesn't exist anymore. I understand that. But it looks harmless. It was presumably up to, but the problem, we don't know what it is you're going to do that will be regarded as impeding or prejudicing the authority of the federal government. So you don't know what is defined by the Lagos government. There's the one who know what impede or prejudice the authority was about. They smuggled in the second one. Say another section enabled the federal government to take over the authority of a region. So there's something you have to, if you do it, your region will be, or government will be taken over, because which was endangering the continuance of the federal government. and again the criteria for endangering, and nobody knows. So in other words, the government from the center, the federal government can come into your region and grab everything and shut you down if they think you're endangering the continuance of the federal government. The third thing they smuggled in to create was most menacing of all. Yeah? So this is the one that really, if you like, shook the Eastern people to the core. It says, it's a state in that the paragraph which state the state of emergency could be declared in any region with the agreement of only 3 military governors. Let me explain this one. If in a decree you can impose what they call state of emergency. When you have a state of emergency, this is the bane of the whole country, because when Willing's committee looked at the minority powers, minority needs throughout the whole country, they saw, yes, they have Efik, Ijo, and all those in the east. Yes, they have some minority. The west has this one minority. The north has this one minority. And they said of all the minorities, the people who should have more autonomy are the middle belt. The middle belt are the TV people. The TV people said, hang on, we're not getting our own fair share in this northern region. So they started rioting. So that's the first time in Balewa, the first prime minister, Balewa's government, that is sending the troops as a state of emergency. So there's a lot of killing and suppression using the military. The next state of emergency was in the west, which, as you know, led to Operation Wetie. Every place was unstable. Now, if you've been killed in the north, another part of Nigeria, 2 million of you have run back to the east. And in the discussion in Aburi, nobody mentioned state of emergency being imposed. And now they smuggled in Decree 8 and saying, if anything happens, and the government in Lagos decided your region now need to be declared state of emergency, all we now need is just 3 members of the Supreme Military Council. So who are these members of the Supreme Military Council? As I told you, Supreme Military Council are made up of the governors of each of the regions: Ojukwu in the east, Hassan in the north, Ejo in the Midwest, and Adebayo in the west. The issue now is that in the north, they can go with Gowan because they have the military, the mid-belt, the TV area. That's where the military of Nigeria is. So you can't argue with them in the north. In the west, they also have the northern soldiers stationed there. The Aburi said they should go away, they should go home to their own part of the country and allow the Yoruba soldiers to rule, to stay in Yoruba, to provide security and everything. But the northerners are still camped there. In the Midwest, there's not a presence other than the northern again. So if you're going to have 3 out of 3 regions, 3 SSC members, Supreme Military Council members, it is possible that you can gang up on 1 because you need 3 now out of 4. So Ojukwu and the people around there saw this Decree 8 as specifically ready to target the eastern region if they feel they're becoming, boisterous or whatever. So because the other 3 can gang up, but in Aburi, what was stated was they have to have concurrence. Everybody have to have a look at whatever you're planning. So if you're going to declare state of emergency, you ask, Hassan, we're coming to do state of emergency. What do you think? You will not be told. If the other 3 agree that you need to be, state of emergency, they come and attack you. So Ojukwu thought clearly that this Decree 8, where they smuggled in this state of emergency provision, was not going to be safe for his people. And that is really where the whole thing began to unravel. So that is very, very menacing, Decree 8, and it wasn't going to fly at all. So therefore, the East rejected this decree. So Gowan now realizes that the Aburi has been reneged and is drawing up that he's now supreme commander, and what he says must go, and he has decreed to impede and charge into any section of the country, so he's becoming very, very unpopular. So at this stage, cue the West. The West, the Yoruba were very, very upset that the planning or the meeting said that you should return to your state of origin because you can't control the security in the West with the military, with the northern soldiers still there. So they should be going back to the north. So the Yorubas began to clamor for this to happen. Awolowo, who has recently been released from prison, and was now in a position to say that, that ad hoc conference meeting you guys are planning, well, I'm resigning from it. I'm not coming. What do you mean you're not coming? Because it says no. The Western delegates are not going to come. Why? Because you have not honored your northern, army leaving that particular region, and therefore it's not going to be healthy in association. And then he's saying to them also, as a leader of thought in Ibadan, they had a meeting in April. Yeah, he resigned his West delegation, which is supposed to soon to be resumed, the ad hoc meeting, stating in his letter, "It is in my considered view," and this is very important, because this is Awolowo now speaking. Awolowo said, "It is in my considered view that whilst some of the demands of the East are excessive, within the context of the Nigerian Union, most of such demands are not only well-founded, but are designed for smooth and healthy association among the various national units of Nigeria." What I will always say is that he has been to the East at this stage, he returned from the East, and he understands the pain the Eastern region is going through. And he says, whilst he understands some of their demand may be excessive, but he can understand that for Nigeria to work, most of what they're saying is important, is designed for the smooth and healthy association among the various people that make up country Nigeria. Because if, for example, the military, you can't have the Igbo soldiers in the same trench or the same barrack as the northern soldiers because they were killed before. So there's a need for an area command where you're from is where you're going to be practicing your soldiery, if you understand what I mean by that. So therefore, the demand from the East is not unreasonable. And Gowan supposed to have made sure that the Northerners had left West. So he says, therefore, a major statement, he says, under those circumstances, if the East were allowed to pull out, the West would feel free to follow suit. Okay, so this is April 1967. So Awolowo added that important point that Havron said he's not going to the ad hoc convention or ad hoc meeting to discuss, if you like, the Constitution. He said if the East, for permission or commission, were allowed to pull out, the West will feel free to follow suit. And in the Midwest, Ejo said, well, he doesn't want the Midwest to be used for any problem. He wanted to remain neutral. So, and demilitarize. He doesn't want the northern soldiers come to the Midwest either. So this panicked the northern region, because for the first time, you have Awolowo in the West, in the East, and the Midwest. They're all singing from the same hymn sheet. They're saying, the North, we need autonomy more than we had in the past. So the North should go back to the North, and this panicked the Northerners. They not normally panic because how are you going to manage Nigeria if the West, if people in the West, the East, and the Midwest are now one unit? And to make matter worse, the Middle Belt, where Gowan is from, constitute the bulk of the military, about 70% of the infantry. So the far north, the Fulani, who were ruling the houses, are now beginning to panic. So you need to understand that dynamic. And what they did then was to say, in order to dominate the rest of Nigeria, they have to split the hegemony. They have to split this coming together of what they call the Southern Solidarity. They need to break into it. So, how did they go about it? For the first time then, in whole of the Nigerian history, the Northerners have a rethink. Every meeting you went to, say, one North, one people. So they provided a monolith, meaning one big block with the North, so that they rule everything. They think they're more in population. The military is concentrated there. So now, if they have a scenario whereby middle belt is no longer so attached to them, and the Southerners are now singing from the same hymn sheet, something is afoot. So how they neutralize this? Well, suddenly they issued a call to the effect that the North should be irrevocably committed to the creation of states. Hang on, what was this? That the northern people, northern government would no longer mind if out of the North we created more states. Okay, I'm listening. And they said whether or not they are created elsewhere, they don't mind, as the basis of stability in the North and also in the entire federation, and urges that the federal government to take immediate steps to set in motion the machinery for creation of these states. My goodness. So this is something, a fresh development. Let me see if I can explain a bit more. Throughout the whole of Nigeria, we're supposed to have a different region, provinces, which will neutralize the hegemonic control of the northern province. They have stuck together as one North. Yeah, everything has to be in one, because if we have one North, that means we can rule the rest of the country. It's a lopsided federation. The Willings Committee said they should have the Midwest out of it. Yes, middle belt, sorry. So that's why the TV were rioting, okay? And that rioting needed military to go in and suppress. So for once, they're now saying, okay, we're going to relax that rule. Let there be more states created. And we don't really mind if the state creation is only in the North and nowhere else. So this change of heart for the ad hoc conference, the decision was then so out of character. Okay, it's like when Nigeria was seeking independence from Britain, and they said the North is not ready. The North is not ready. The North is not ready. And then suddenly they had an agreement with the Britain that 50% of the votes in the central legislation will go to the North. So they have 50% built in. So they don't have to come out from the North to campaign to win the election, because in the South you have ANC on the one side and Action Group on the other. They're always going to split the remaining 50%. So they were always going to have majority. So people from the North didn't have to come out to canvass or for election, but people in the South had to go out to canvass. So they had an inbuilt majority, which Britain guaranteed, and therefore the country was going to be ruled by the North in perpetuity. And that is why there's instability built in. It's called failure engineering. Now, on this occasion after Aburi, they decided they're going to loosen the things a bit. They're going to allow more states to be created, to which will, in a way, appear to weaken the North, to allow the South not to be so, compact, or to weaken the Southern solidarity. Okay, so I don't know if I've explained that properly. So that's very, very interesting indeed, politically. So let me read this then. It says this change of thought, change of heart, the decision was so out of character that one is led to the conclusion either that the minority tribes in the infantry had given their voice, or that the Fulanese or the Emirs had decided they could use the creation of new states to break up the growing solidarity of the South, while themselves remaining united behind the facade, give the impression they've divided the North, but in fact, it's like a smoke screen across the state boundaries. Okay, so that is now. So what did this do? So Gowan seized on this and decided effectively. This is what actually made Gowan to now become more prominent in ruling Nigeria, because you no longer have the stubbornness from the North insisting they are one North, and everybody else need to be divided and carved up. So this decision solidified Gowan's power, because the three southern regions, the West, the East, and the Midwest, as long as Gowan no longer advocates, because Gowan is now in the position to advocate creation of states. But this is exactly what Awolowo has always prayed for and wanted, because there's no way they're going to break up the northern hegemony unless it's carved up a bit. So Awolowo was happy with this idea of creation of more states, as it means the breakup of the North. So he jumped at this chance. He was very happy with this. The next thing is Awolowo is now biting. So they decided to make him Commissioner of Finance. Wow, that's a very powerful ministry. He's going to now be in charge of the finance. Remember, the Igbos are nowhere near in sight. The Easterners have gone back to the East. So Gowan is now going to be in charge of the powerful ministry of finance. Okay, and on top of it, the third one, to bribe him, is now going to be the deputy chairman of the Supreme Council, and where they have mixed the government with soldiers and civilians. Okay, so we have an issue here because remember, Awolowo was released from prison. He is now the chairman of the Supreme Council, which Gowan is supposed to be in charge, and he's the Commissioner of Finance. And the North is now being carved up in various other units. Okay, joining him as a civilian in this Supreme Council is Chief Inahara. Inahara is a minority tribe meant from Midwestern. And another person is Joseph Taka, who is the champion of the Thieves. Also, TV is spelled T-I-V, but they call TV. Okay, they also got ministerial appointment. And so, you see what's happened. They have grabbed the middle belt, given them a post in the Gowans. They grabbed the West and given them posts. So now, having done that, they have broken the actual, if you like, the solidarity that was building up between the West, the East, and the Midwest. So, having done that, it closed the ranks. Okay, Gowan is now strong to take on or do a showdown with the East. So that is the tactics he used. I must remind you also, before I forget, that after the killings in the North, the Yorubas, the Obas, if you like, their kings, went up to the North to thank them for sparing the Yoruba people who were in their country, in their part of the country, because the target of the genocide was on the Igbos. So they had the Obas go up to the emirs and thank them for not killing the Yorubas. So you can imagine now what's happening. The Yorubas are now getting closer to the North. And throughout the, the April, May, June, Hassan was visiting Ibadan on so many occasions. They're having lots of discussions. They're having lots and lots of discussion. What's going to happen if there's a war, and so on. So, and these Westerners, because Awolowo insisted that the Nigerian military, Northerners, should now leave the West, so they agreed. They moved them from Ibadan, just up the street, along the road to Ilorin. So they fulfilled the idea of northern soldiers going to north, Easterners going to the east, and so on and so forth. So so Yoruba has got, they've been subdued because they've agreed moving the military away from the western region has been complied with, although Ilorin, you and I know, is also Yoruba land, but it's literally so close to Ibadan, if there's any problem, they just drop back in. They haven't gone too far. So the military has been answered. They're now finance commissioner, the deputy leader. So the East is now being isolated. Okay. So what did Gowan then do next? Okay, he's now ready to fight the East. So he'll be the question now is, if the East you break out, this is going to be a very, very quick fight. If you read strategy about war, before you declare war, I think it's a Chinese general who said, make sure you won the battle, make sure you won the war before you declare war. So if you are confident that you're going to win the fight, then you declare war, isn't it? So, but Nigerian scenario, all the military equipment was concentrated in the north. All the soldiery is in the north. Everything is in the north. The only thing that the East was involved in is building officers, because they were trained, high skill manpower. But the actual soldiery, the military, the training, the ammunition, the development, everything was all from the northern region. So they had sufficient firepower that if they want to fight the East, it would take a few hours. In fact, Hassan said it would take 48 hours, and the East will be subdued. So they should start making noise. Maybe about 72 hours, and so on. So they were really ready now to take on the East, and to finish the job they started in May. They haven't quite finished dealing with the Igbos yet. So that is the scenario then around May. And there was another peace move. Yeah? That's good. At this stage, the press people were coming to him. And remember, since early May, they have imposed a blockade on the East, so they're not really going to buy and bring in weapons and what have you, which extended postal service, postal orders, but also affected telephone cable, telex machines, and so on. So the East was under blockade. They gained the rapport with the West, the Middle Belt, the Midwest, and so on. So now it's between Gowan and Ojukwu, and to see how they could sort this out. Ojukwu, of course, sensing the gathering storm, told the newspaper people, Reuters, he said, I think we are now going downhill. And it would take a great deal to hold the momentum. We are very close, very, very close. That means the confrontation. So at this stage, late juncture, around May 7th or so, there was another move. A group calling itself the National Conciliation Committee. This was headed by a federal chief justice called Sir Adetukumbo Ademola, the Yoruba guy, and he included Chief Awolowo. They visited Ojukwu again around May 7th. They listened to his views, accepted all his demands, and called for the federal government to implement them. These demands included little more than implementation of the agreement on 9th August, to post the troops back to their origin, and also to call for the economic sanction to be lifted. So, on May 20th, Gowan accepted all the recommendations. But it was another illusory hope. It appears Gowan said, yeah, I'll take this, and then don't do it. So, for example, he says he announced that the ban on Nigerian Airways flight to the East, remember there's a blockade, has been lifted. But he announced that, but along with other sanctions. But actually, the director of the Airways privately admitted that he had not yet had an order to resume flight to the East. So as for the troops, Colonel Hassan, as I mentioned earlier, who flew to Kaduna to Ibadan all the time to inform the troops they were to be moved. And this time, as I mentioned, to Ilorin, which is a stone throw away from the border. Okay, so they can always return back to the main axis. So therefore, the clamor in the East to get out of Nigeria became too strong, even for Ojukwu to bear. Therefore, with all these antecedents, on the 26th of May, Ojukwu then summoned the consultative assembly of chiefs and elders to give him a unanimous decision on what to do next. Okay, so there was about 335 delegates that gathered at Enugu. And what are they doing in Enugu? They have to come and hear what's been happening. Ojukwu was asking them, we need to meet and we need to talk and to brief you on the current situation, because the refugees are not being looked after. This edict have produced a blockade for us. In fact, there's something called Ofe Enwenu. In other words, you're eating your soup with that salt in it, because before the war started, because of the blockade for 3 months, okay, from March, around June, July, and so on, there was already scarcity of some items like salt. So the blockade was beginning to bite. So Ojukwu then called this advisory committee of chiefs and elders to Enugu. So they're about 335. They're made up of people, unions of teachers, and every, if you like, town or so was represented. They had nominated their members. If your town or so, you have a chief who went there to represent you, to hear what has to be done. So Ojukwu then called them, summoned them, 26th of May, 1967, and told them, here is our situation, okay? We're looking for solutions. Number one, do we accept the terms of the North and what Gowan is saying, and thereby submit to domination by the North? In other words, this business of if the British quitted, says Tafawa Balewa, and the uninterrupted march to the sea will continue. So, if you like, in their minds, they know what's happening. The North are creeping down. They massacred them in the North, and now they want to come further down. So, as you said, you can accept the terms and go on then to submit to their domination by the North, or to continue the present stalemate and carry on drifting, or ensure the survival of the people by asserting their autonomy. Okay? So we have 3 decisions to make. So Ojukwu said, please discuss and let's come to a conclusion, a solution of what to do to preserve your people, or to hand in the towel and let you be dominated by other people. Okay, so that is really the situation at that time. So Ojukwu was accused, of course, in Aburi of being so educated, being so prepared at the Aburi conference, that he ran the show and so on and so forth. But it's all about education, okay? And I think Malcolm X said that just because you graduated with a white man's degree, yeah, Malcolm X, just because you graduated with a white man's degree does not make you educated, okay? It says, if you haven't learned anything about yourself or how to help your people, then you are still uneducated. So therefore you should know thyself. And Ojukwu's motto is, to thine own self be true. That's Ojukwu's motto, personal motto. So Ojukwu was therefore, if you like, in a position where he has a decision to make. He has his education, but is also very, very sensitive to what to do for his people. So he presented these dilemma. For all the things he's tried to try and protect and shield them, and there come a time now, they have to now advise him what is the best thing to do. Accept the terms of the North and go on, who, when you say one thing, he does the other. Very, very slippery. Countering every single agreement. Accept him and thereby submit to domination by the North, to continue the present stalemate and drift, or ensure the survival of the people by asserting their autonomy. The whole thing is about being able to be responsive to what your people want you to do for them and not do what somebody else is dictating for them to be done. Okay, so that is really where we were. So on the 26th and 27th, there was a 2-day meeting in India. Remember what I said? They had people from various other parts of Eastern region. BU from the coastal region, B from the Goja area, every province was represented. So they spent time discussing and trying to work out how best to go about this. Okay. Now, so once they finished discussing, it was concluded that the best thing for them to do is, in fact, if you like democracy, they voted with their feet that enough is enough. They've been humiliated enough in Nigeria. They're not having any compensation paid to them. Nothing is working. The best thing to do is to pull out. They didn't have any choice. They have to leave. They have to pull out of Nigeria. And so they told the Juku, we are mandating you. We're not asking you to. We're not asking you to think about it. We're not asking you whether or not you think it's a good idea. We are mandating you to take us out of the country. We want you to declare us an independent country. So that is really where the whole thing unraveled. Okay? So let me see if I can find the declaration they made, or the mandate they gave to Juku, because it's very, very important. And after 2 days conference, it was decided the best thing to do, because they're not really getting far from Nigeria, from Gowan. You say one thing and it flips to the other, flip-flop. It appears it was getting all this wonderful advice from the foreigners and so on. So he wasn't really in charge. Not only that, the Constitution of Nigeria gave you protection, because if you're a citizen of Nigeria, you have protection from the army and from the navy and also from the police. But the Igbos, it doesn't appear, or the Biafrans, to be the eastern region, it doesn't appear that they had any protection. So the government of Gowan had failed them. They can't guarantee them any safety whatsoever. So it was time they did something which will be for their own safety. That's really what the conference was about. So let me just see if I can find what the actual mandate they gave to Juku. They said, whereas we are living witnesses of injustices and atrocities committed against Eastern Nigeria, among which are the premeditated murder of over 30,000 of our innocent men, women, and children by northern Nigeria, the calculated destruction of the property of our sons and daughters, the shameless conversion of 2 million Eastern Nigeria into refugees in their own country, all this without remorse. If they apologize and say, we're sorry, this happened, that would be another thing. But nobody apologized. Nobody took responsibility. No one was arrested. So in law, it's condonement. It means the government is behind it. So now, whereas it carried on in consequence of these and other acts of discrimination and injustice, we have painfully realized that the Federation of Nigeria has failed and has given us no protection. Whereas, in spite of these facts, the government and people of Eastern Nigeria have persisted in their efforts to find a practical and a just solution that would preserve the continued existence of Nigeria as one corporate unit and restore peace and confidence, as demonstrated by the initiative of our military governor in getting all the military leaders together in Aburi, Ghana. Whereas the hopes which the Aburi agreement engendered have proved to be misplaced and have been destroyed by a series of acts of bad faith and distortions, and finally by a refusal on the part of Lagos government to implement these and other agreements, notwithstanding the facts that they were freely and voluntarily entered into. Okay? Whereas the Federation of Nigeria has forfeited any claim to our allegiance by these acts and by the economic, political, and diplomatic sanctions imposed against us by the so-called federal government. And whereas the object of government is the good of the governed and the will of the people, its ultimate sanction. Now, therefore, in consideration of these and other facts and injustices, we, the chiefs, elders, and representatives of all the 20 provinces of Eastern Nigeria, assembled in this joint meeting of the Advisory Committee of Chiefs and Elders and the Consultative Assembly at Enugu, this 27th day of May 1967, hereby solemnly mandate His Excellency Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu, Military Governor of Eastern Nigeria, to declare at the earliest practicable date Eastern Nigeria as a free, sovereign, and independent state by the name and title of the Republic of Biafra. And it says, resolve that the new Republic of Biafra shall have the full and absolute power of a sovereign state and shall establish commerce, levy war, conclude peace, enter into diplomatic relations, and carry out as of right other sovereign responsibilities. Therefore, direct that the Republic of Biafra may enter into arrangement with any sovereign unit or units in what remains of Nigeria or in any other part of Africa desirous of association with us for the purpose of running a common service organization and for the establishment of economic ties. Recommend that the Republic of Biafra should become a member of the Commonwealth of Nations, the Organization of African Unity, and the United Nations organizations. They recommended the adoption of a federal constitution based on the new provincial units, reaffirm His Excellency's assurance of protection for the persons, properties, and business of foreign nationals in our territory, declare our unqualified confidence in the military governor of Eastern Nigeria, Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu, and assure him of our unreserved support for the way and manner he has handled the crises in the country. So help us God. So what I read for you is the mandate given to Ojukwu on the 27th of May 1967 to go ahead and declare Eastern Region the Republic of Biafra. Okay. So the key thing now is at the most practical date, the earliest practical date. So what was happening? The rest of Nigeria, of course, Gowan knows what was going on in this meeting. So what did he do? So that the mandate has now been given to Juku, and Gowan immediately activated the plan the next day. What plan was this? He declared a state of emergency, as we've been talking about. If you declare a state of emergency, it means your military can walk in. As Fela would say, jara jao, jara, bad turn, left turn, go and quench. Jara, jara, so, go and quench, jara, go and die. So the military, which started the whole problem, because they're sent in to quench the political decisions, killing people or preventing crises. So if a state of emergency is declared, the next thing the army will walk in. So Gowan said he declared a state of emergency, simultaneously published a decree dividing Nigeria into 12 states. Hang on. Abolishing the existing region. So Gowan cancelled on the 27th, where they've given a Juku mandate. He cancelled the existing regions. So the eastern region doesn't exist anymore. Neither the north, west, and so on. So he said, there's a decree by my own. I cancelled it. Remember, Aburi said you're not supposed to do anything like this without consulting the people who have the area command and so on and so forth. Then the next one said he could hardly have behaved more provocatively. In other words, if he really wanted to, it's like you're about to fight somebody through and you're wondering whether the fight is going to happen or not. That person then comes and pours sand in your eyes or slaps you. So it is really asking, provoking. So for one thing, there has been no consultation. Nobody asked Gowan, why did you suddenly decide to create these states? Did you consult the people? Where's the boundary? Was there a discussion? Was there a consultation? No, he just said, "Fiat, I'm going to divide all this country into 12 states," which was in itself against the constitution. The country Midwest, Midwest was designed after there was a referendum, isn't it? Yeah. And the Cameroon. The southern part joined from Nigeria, joined Cameroon, and northern part from Cameroon became Nigerian. So there are referendums, there are constitutional referendum which have occurred in consultation. You can't just start carving places up without asking the people who live there. Okay, so that is the next thing. So it went back on all the promises that each region would have its full say in any future format of association. So Gowan did not bother to ask anybody, just by fiat, by dictatorship. He decided. Remember, he was not the most senior in the army. He came in as a rebel, with people supporting with guns. He's now imposing his will on the whole country. So when you say people from, whichever state you come from, Gowan has created it. Did he ask you? No, he didn't. Okay? So, more important was the division of the eastern part into 3 tiny states. If you looked at eastern region, remember when the Willings Committee looked at the minority, they didn't think it was necessary to divide the east into these little minority states because they're already integrated. There are a lot of Igbo people living in what they call the rivers, in the Calabar area and so on, in places like that. There are Igbos. So, but what he did was circle a corner and sort of East Central State, and now become Igbo territory. So what about Igbos who are outside these territories? No consultation, and now. To make the matter worse, Port Harcourt used to be an Owerri province. Okay, let me repeat that. Port Harcourt used to be an Owerri province. Majority of Igbo people went to Port Harcourt, developed to build towns, and so now Port Harcourt is no longer part of Igbo. It's now It's now rivers. So so East Central State is now located right in the middle, surrounded, no access to the sea. That is going to be the Igbo, place. So it has been described then as an open challenge to secede. So what Gowan did is to say, I dare you, you could go on, I dare you to secede. Because he's got all the weapons. He's gone to outside and he's got access. He is in charge of Lagos. The outsiders recognize him as the de facto head of state. So he got access to international community to seek weapons and so on. So he's a real dictator. So he wants to impose his will or whatever his master's will on the whole of everybody. So therefore, for short, it says he's going to abrogate this Decree 8. Remember the one that says he can impose, if like, emergency on any part of the country, take over the area command or whatever it is, and for a short period necessary to carry out the measures which are now urgently required. Says go on. I don't know what these measures are urgently required. It's not rehabilitating those who have lost so many things. It's basically creating states to cause more confusion and cause more killing. So therefore, it was left with the Juku to respond, because they've gone to the stage where there's nothing else left, really. They've tried everything. They've gone to Aburi. They try to preserve unity. And people say, oh, Juku, yeah, he was a rebel. He wanted to break the country, and that's why there was a war. But Juku had more to lose than the average Nigerian, because his father, who recently died, is a multimillionaire. In the current state, he'd probably be a billionaire. He's one of the richest men in Africa, let alone in Nigeria. So, and all the properties and so majority of them are outside the eastern region. So he alone has so much to lose. He didn't have to go and declare Biafra, but he can either say, I'm going to look after my people, their interest, or I look after my property. Ojukwu chose his people. And I attended his funeral in London when it occurred. I've never seen such outpouring of grief and respect by his people, because they knew what he did for them. So he was a proper leader who cared for his people. So what the Ojukwu did here is something remarkable. There was no weapon really to defend his people. So he said, okay, they want to fight. Fine. So he had to rally his people and started telling them that, from now on, you need to know we have to defend ourselves. And even if they crossed over, because the injustice was so much that if anyone should invade our territory, he said, even the grass will rise and fight. Hey, everybody, the grass will rise and fight. Even the grass will fight for us. So everybody knew the injustice, the actual pain they've gone through, that you have no choice. So he's been given the mandate to declare a country which people knew would be the only way to protect those who have run away, who have fled from far-flung areas in Nigeria. Remember, the northern Nigeria is half the Western Europe, a huge place, and people had to escape. Those who managed to get into the train were stopped and killed on the way. A classic case of those who are beheaded and put back in the train. A woman who had a suitcase, and inside is the head of the daughter that was chopped off in front of her. There's so much pain for the Igbos and those in the eastern region who suffered. And the last straw is to impose on them and this sanction of state of emergency, meaning the army could rush across any time and finish the killing. So with all that goings on the 30th of May, Ojukwu called all the diplomatic people, the journalists, they all gathered on the State House in Enugu. So Ojukwu then had to read the Declaration of Independence, which I'm going to read part of here for you. So, as they all gathered, so Ojukwu said, fellow countrymen and women, you, the people of Eastern Nigeria, conscious of the supreme authority of Almighty God over all mankind, of your duty to yourselves and posterity, aware that you can no longer be protected in your lives and in your property by any government based outside Eastern Nigeria, believing that you are born free and have certain inalienable rights which can best be preserved by yourselves, unwilling to be unfreed partners in any association of a political or economic nature, rejecting the authority of any person or persons other than the military government of Eastern Nigeria, to make any imposition of whatever kind or nature upon you, determined to dissolve all political and other ties between you and the former Federal Republic of Nigeria, prepared to enter into such association, treaty, or alliance with any sovereign state within the former Federal Republic of Nigeria and elsewhere, on such terms and conditions as best to subserve your common good, affirming your trust and confidence in me, having mandated me to proclaim on your behalf and in your name that Eastern Nigeria be a sovereign, independent republic. Now, therefore, I, Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu, military governor of Eastern Nigeria, by virtue of the authority and pursuant to the principles recited above, do hereby solemnly proclaim that the territory and region known as and called Eastern Nigeria, together with their continental shelf and territorial waters, shall henceforth be an independent sovereign state of the name and title of the Republic of Biafra. So, ladies and gentlemen, with those words, Eastern Nigeria is no longer, in Nigeria. We have gone out, and the word Biafra became the vocabulary, and that is how it was declared. And I have to tell you that it was Franco Pigo. I don't know if you know about Franco Pigo. He was one of the delegates at that conference that mandated Ojukwu that what is our name? Franco Pigo is His Royal Highness Chief Frank Opigo Dawi III is is of Bayelsa State. Was a statesman, politician, educationalist, is one, and he on the 27th of May 1967, he suggested to General Ojukwu, to Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuemeka at that time, the governor of the old Eastern region, that the name of the then emerging country should be the Republic of Biafra, to maintain the name in ancient map of Africa, and so on. So that's how Biafra got its name. In that day, the Eastern Broadcasting Service was changed to, Britain had its own broadcasting service first called BBC. So you call it Biafra BBC. So on that day, it became the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, BCB. That is the forerunner of this hallowed platform, Radio Biafra. So that was the first day came into existence. That was on the 30th of May, 1967. And of course, along with the name, we had a flag. Very interesting. So what sort of flag is it? Well, it's the flag you and I are familiar with now. And the first time the flag of Biafra was hoisted was on the 30th of May 1967. And for those of you who haven't seen it or not done anything about it, it consists of red, black, and green horizontal colors. At the middle of it is a golden sunrise, half a yellow sun, over a golden bar. The sun has 11 rays, representing the 11 provinces of Biafra. The red is for Pan-African color on the Biafran flag, represents the blood that unites all people of black African ancestry that are shed for liberation. The black color represents the black people whose existence as a nation, though not a nation state, is affirmed by the existence of the flag. And the green represents the abundant natural wealth of the region. So that is the actual flag. Now, as the war starts, most soldiers don't mind going to battle without weapon, but they do not want to go into battle without the badge. The Rising Sun badge. That's all they needed. They were prepared to die with just that badge. On the same day, of course, the Biafran national anthem, because of the swearing-in ceremony, it's a very solemn occasion, the Biafran national anthem was sang for the first time. And I'm going to read it out. So because there's been some mistake, people, when they print it, I'm going to highlight some of the issues. It's a national anthem. The music is based on Finlandia, which is by Sibelius, and the composer, Finnish origin. And is modified by an ode to Onisha, which Nnamdi wrote, so it was fine-tuned to be the national anthem of Biafra. And it says, "Land of the rising sun, we love and cherish. Beloved homeland of our brave heroes. We must defend our lives or we shall perish. We shall protect our hearts from all our foes. But if the price is death for all we hold dear, then let us die without a shred of fear." I often see it written, the penultimate verse, or the penultimate sentence. To protect our hearts is not H-E-R-T, but H-E-A-R-T-H-S, hearts. It's like protecting, if you like, your most important central part of your home, your heart. Yeah? So don't write it with hearts. It's not about hearts. The second thing about the first verse is that was Danjuma who was saying, you must defend your lives. You must defend your lives or you perish. Well, Biafra have been saying this since 1967. They're now waking up to the fact that the army is not neutral. The army joined in the killing of the people. They will do it to the mid-belt. Now he's saying you must learn to defend your lives, defend yourselves. So Biafra had the understanding at that stage that there's a need to protect yourself. The second verse, very interesting. Hail to Biafra, consecrated nation. That brings the spiritual side of Biafra. O fatherland, this be our solemn pledge. Defending thee shall be a dedication. Spilling our blood will count a privilege. The waving standard which emboldens the free shall always be our flag of liberty. As I read it, I notice there's not many national anthems can beat this one, because it speaks to the heart of the people who know the importance of freedom. They're willing to die. And when you're willing to die for a cause you believe in, then it is difficult to stop that movement. So it's a consecrated nation. They're willing to dedicate and spill their blood to make sure it comes into existence. Then he went on in verse 3, we shall emerge triumphant from this ordeal. They're prepared. It doesn't matter what it costs. We're going to come out of this triumphant. And through the crucible unscathed will pass. When we are poised, the wounds of battle to heal, we shall remember those who died in mass. Then shall our trumpets peal the glorious song of victory we scored over might and wrong. It's dedicated to making sure, which as in the Second World War, when Britain go to war, they wanted to prove that might is not always right. You've got all your firepower, as Hitler did. You think because you've got might, therefore you're right. No. So ours, we're going to triumph over wrong. We're going to have victory scored over the might and wrong. Okay? We will sign the prophet. We have not started celebrating yet. We will have that glorious song one day. And then say, oh God, protect us from the hidden pitfall. Guide all our movements, lest we go astray. Give us the strength to heed the humanist call, to give and not to count the cost each day. Bless those who rule to serve with resoluteness, to make this climb a land of righteousness. See, the land of Biafra suffered enough, but he wanted to be turned into land of righteousness. A certain breed of people are needed for that. So it's a high, lofty, spiritual anthem, which from my point of view is second to none. And I pray that in my lifetime, in a major gathering like Olympics, World Cup and so on, we had this song hoisted. That means we have arrived. Though we've been delayed, a nation has been born, and it will be restored. And this I give you, my brother Jonathan, that our people have gone through a lot. Declaration of Biafra, which this particular lecture was trying to target. There's a lot in it, but Ojukwu has been accused of, rushing and declaring Biafra and said the Nigeria had to fight because he's a rebel. If you look at the situation, he had no choice but to preserve his people. And more people died. We're talking millions. At one stage, it was up to 10,000 people, children especially, were dying in a day. Can you imagine that? So we have been through a lot, and restoring Biafra is one of the biggest challenges of our time. And in my lifetime, I see the same that I remember when Biafra was declared. The outpouring of joy, which is unbelievable. It's like Biafra, when people heard we have declared Biafra, hi, come and see. Just people were so overjoyed. And it's something, it's a beauty to behold. Everybody's like, Ojukwu said, as when he used to be a sprinter, and what happened when Nigeria was going to be independent, everybody was already, if as a sprinter, you're good sprinting, you had the mark on the box, on your set, on your marks, get say go. You just want the whistle to go, and you show the world what you can do. So people that returned to Biafra were given an opportunity to have a country, and were in such a, oh my goodness, they were ready to show what can be done. So let's do this. They're ready to fight. Some, you're going to battle, you haven't got any weapon. You are behind somebody who's in front of you. When that one dies, you pick up the weapon. Take my boots off when I die and give it to people in the camp. Yeah? Why was all this? Because we believed that our cause was right. When we came Maduja Ike Queens, when came Maduja Ike Chukwu, When they sing it, and you hear the Biafran soldiers sing it, my goodness, you know we have a nation. So I'm going to leave it as that, and please make sure you've written your questions down, and come Sunday, by God's grace, we'll answer as much of your questions as possible. I hope I've been able to help you understand a little bit what it was like, and all the goings on that allow Biafra to be created. And our job now is to restore it, because they have not stopped killing us. I thank you once again. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Mazi Jonathan.
Mazi, before you go, there's something also I want you to... It's a question, because in all this pre-war, I mean, politics and counter-politics that went on and on, you know, you read about the declaration of Awolowo, who was released from prison. Now, I want to ask this. What has been the action or the actions or politics, open help politically of Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe in all these? Because we have Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe was prominent historically when he sided. Later on, he jumped fence and entered into Nigeria side and started internationally using his immense power as a big politician, as a former Nigeria ceremonial president, in order to counter what we are doing, or what Ojukwu was doing, calling Ojukwu a rebel, even internationally. But before the war, when all these killings and Ojukwu was going on and on, doing all these things, I don't know whether any other, but I never really read or heard about Azikiwe lending hand openly, the one we should know, about resolving the issue in the pre-war time, the crisis we have. Please, I don't know whether you understand what I mean. You can say something about it.
Yeah, I can. Nnamdi Azikiwe is a pretty powerful guy. If you look at his own history, his own story, he almost single-handedly convinced the British that Nigeria should become independent. He did a lot of work. Nkrumah, he sent Nkrumah of Ghana to America to follow his footsteps. Zeke sent some, what they call the Argonauts, handpicked people from Nigeria to go to America to study, to learn. So Zeke was instrumental in dismantling the British hegemony in Nigeria. Now, so much so that when Nigeria got its independence, Nkrumah was extremely angry with him, because he was one of the, if you like, those who led to the independence of Nigeria, and yet he's just sitting back and acting as the ceremonial president, which doesn't have any power whatsoever. Zeke had a lot of issues because he was a peace-loving man. He was born in Zenguri, up in the north, and his concern was the liberation of black man, and he coined the phrase to restore the dignity of man. He went to America, washed dishes, studied, and all sorts of things. He did extremely well for an individual, and his political rhetoric, his publications, was the one that galvanized the movement to allow Britain to sit up and they took him seriously. When he came to Biafra, first of all, the coup occurred, and it was in Britain from August 1965. And the coup occurred in January 66. So he was recovering from a long infection. He had an operation. He was recovering when there was a coup. So the Northerners said, Zeke escaped. He must have been tipped off. Well, that's another story. So he was one of those who was spared, if you like. When Nigeria had its independence, the very first election was a disaster. A disaster in the sense that the election was so rigged, so badly, so he himself, and Zeke was saying, I think Nigeria should be divided peacefully rather than in pieces, because the election cannot stand. He's not going to sanction it. So because of compromise, they managed to persuade him that although it was rigged and so on and so forth, they should go ahead. I'm talking about the very first election. And the world will see that Nigeria cannot hold this an election without mess up. So between himself and Tafawa Balewa, they cobbled, they compromised. They were going to dissolve Nigeria in 1964. So they managed to cobble it to give Tafawa Balewa another chance. So, and all that counted against the Tafawa Balewa because the whole thing was a compromise in the first place. So when the war did start, his role was highly respected. The national anthem I just read out was composed by him. He was one of the people look up to him. Okay, so particularly the Igbo politicians. So he was also, if you watch some of the pictures, he was sat with the Ojukwu, and when they started off as his advisors. And he was sent off to all the important capitals. And his friends like Julius Nyerere of Tanzania was one of those who recognized Biafra. So Zeke just had to convince them that we know about African unity, but here's a different problem. So was it Kenneth Kawinda, another friend of his, who also recognized Biafra. So he was very instrumental in the early stages, making sure Biafra got the recognitions it needed. In February 69, he was one of those who proposed that the best thing is to send in troops, United Nations troops, to go and camp between Nigeria and Biafra, so that there will be an opportunity for people of Biafran origin to decide whether they want to be Biafrans or Nigerians. They should have some form of a referendum or some form of an amnesty. A plebiscite. That was his exact word. That a plebiscite should be issued between Nigeria and these people to see whether they want to remain Biafrans or so. Because the UN ignored all that. These are all important decisions. And meanwhile, Biafrans were dying. The escalation of people dying was such that it's possible that they couldn't take it anymore, and he defected and went to Lagos to go and talk to them, and of course they capitalized on that and said, aha, you see, Zeke has abandoned the Juku, and they should give up the rebellion. As a child, when I heard that Zeke has gone to the Nigerian side, we were demoralized. You don't know what demoralized means. It's like they've taken the heart out of our fight. He's our father. Everybody respected him. And then he's gone to Nigerian side. My goodness, that was so painful. So it's a very, very complex situation what Zeke did. And whether he was able to pursue Gowan or the British or whatever they hold on him, that, you killed us enough. This nonsense has to stop. No victor, no vanquished. I don't know. I'm just speculating. So it's easy for us to say, Zeke did this and this happened. He didn't support us at the end. And that was very, very painful, I must admit. even as a child, I recognized that. So what am I saying? I'm saying that if Zeke acted as a jingoist, what I mean by that, somebody who put his tribe first, we would not be in this mess. And I'll tell you why. In 1953, the British asked him, okay, Zeke, we're going to give independence if 2 out of 3 of you want your independence, meaning the Yorubas, the East, the North. So Zeke thought about it and said, yes, the East is ready, the West is ready, but the North will say, oh, we're not ready. We will wait for them to be ready. That's the biggest mistake of the century. They wait for the North to be ready. When the North was ready, they grabbed the 50% of the vote, and now we're in this mess. You understand? So there's a lot to talk about what has happened to us. Zeke was a Pan-Africanist. He wants to be the whole Africa united for black man's sake. And he established, He established the Nsukka University almost single-handedly. And he's done well. It's just there are some areas, no one is perfect. There are certain areas you have to look at and ask yourself why. And if I had done this, this would have happened. If we'd done this, and so on and so forth. So I leave it as that, and there's so much to talk about. Thank you.
Mazi, before you go to making your closing remark, there's something also I want to say on this issue of Zeke. You know, one of the very good qualities of a leader is the ability, the capability of making sound judgment, analytical judgment. If I go this way, how will it be in the next 1 year for my people, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, in the next 50 years? That is my own view of issues. That is why, we should be careful, highly careful and prudent on issues, because a leader is just not somebody that is able to galvanize or no. Sound judgment, sound. In that early time, it might be absurd in one way or the other, but in the future, he will be targeting the future of the people. Why am I saying this? You look at Ahmad Bello. At that early time, Ahmad Bello concentrated on northernization. He don't care about anything about Nigeria. He looked weird to every other people. But he continued hammering, openly, northernization. He wants everything for his people. And even before independence, they were given 52% of seats in the legislature. 52%, which means they are natural majority. That is what they are enjoying today. You said it. That they don't even need to go to make campaign or anything. That's why anything that happens, Nigerian politics is better. The Yorubas are trying to appease the North. The Igbos are trying to appease the North. So the idea is just relaxing because it is a natural gift from Britain. Why is it so? Because their leader, he saw the future and he started before. You have to put, politics is local. That's why, Mazi, the other day I asked you privately, why is it that all these our leaders, formerly Azikiwe was born in Zungeru, in the north, even Ojukwu was born in the north, Nzogu was born in the north. What happened? Why? Sometimes if I start reflecting on these issues, I don't understand the mystery behind even our existence. I am telling you. So that is what I have to also add there, so that you continue to making your closing remark, if you may. Thank you, Mazi.
Yeah, thank you very much. There's so much to talk about. Badru Bello was quite a different guy. in the sense that he has an Islamization agenda up his sleeve. And the Brits favored them because when they went to conquer this vast land, this vast area in the north, what was happening was they were supposed to be coming down with its Islamic jihad towards the southern part. And they conquered the Hausa land and put emirs in all the various emirates. And when the British arrived, their Gatling gun, the machine gun, the houses, they had their horsemen and so on. So the face-off was the houses with the Fulani emirs were defeated by the British. The issue here was that the houses didn't fight as hard as they could have fought because the emirs were suppressing them. So the British had an easy victory. The Fulanese emirs were very smart. Rather than say, okay, you're beating us, so fine. They agreed that, yes, we are emirs, but we can run this area for you. So the British, trying to save money, allowed the people you beaten to carry on ruling the area you beaten on your behalf. It's like you're having a fight, you chase somebody out of their house, you bring them back as landlord. So they were looking after the interest of Britain. Now Britain, for them to do that, they told the Brits, we don't want Christianity up here because we are already Muslims. You can't impose this on us. We rather have a Muslim way of life. Britain said, okay, if that's the condition for looking after this area for us. So that decision for the British is really what made Nigeria unhinged, because you don't want Christianity, you don't want missionary. That means the way you've been running things remain without any external pressure, a change. So you're not exposed to modernity. You don't want to read, modern way of life. You can't run the trains. You can't run telephones. You can't run post office and things like that. So you need people who can do it in that vast area. So what they did is to recruit people from the south who had been exposed to, if you like, missionary teachings and so on and so forth. The Yorubas were vastly ahead of the eastern region. But the eastern region mobilized their people and learned to their surprise that these guys are really sharp. They're avid for education. So an insatiable appetite. Every village came out under mango tree, they were learning. So within a short period of time, they supplied more manpower than anybody else. In fact, before the war started, they had more graduates than the whole Black Africa together. So they were therefore able to go up to the north, where the Muslims have refused to go to school and so on. They went there to establish. But the problem was that Britain insisted everything has to be established in the north. And they didn't really trust the Southerners, because the Southerners, as Ahmad Bello said, if you put them in a camp, within a year or so, they can emerge as the head coach of that camp and so on. I think for me, that's an insult. We don't just emerge as head coach or the headman of that camp. We emerge as the owners. So he underestimated us. Anyway, so as a result, because his own people weren't coming up to the task, he deliberately did what is like apartheid. He suppressed anybody from outside from taking any post. So he ran when he turned up in 51, 52, made sure every post is filled by the Northerners, which, that is really the undoing of our people. And if you look at the military formations, they are all sited in the north. And you're right. What were people like Zeke and saying, what were they doing when the whole country was informed and every single plum industry, everything has been sited in the north. That is part of our problem. So we are forced to go up there to open the place to the detriment of our people, of our own place. And that is why we're paying the price now. Yeah.
Let me just say something before you continue, please. You know, when we look at the action of Ahmad Bello, declaring that the North was not ready for independence, they were colonized, yes, as Northern Protectorate and Southern Protectorate, so-called. I don't know protection from who? From the French. Now, I can also, my own view, I can applaud him in a way, because, you know, yes, we are fast in learning, but when you look at it in another perspective, Mazi, for me, it is not even a good idea for a people just to jump from their original civilization suddenly to another civilization. Yes, it's sharp, you can learn, but that is dangerous also. It's dangerous. I don't know whether you understand what I mean. So, Ahmad Bello, I think the way I am seeing it, he don't want, we are talking about reading, that is in English alphabet, but they have their own, they have been reading in Arabic, they call Ajame. That is using Hausa to write Arab, you know. So, or using Arab, sorry, to write Hausa. So, what am I trying to say? They don't want that sudden change. Direct around, that is 180 degrees, turn around, about turn, of which our people did it. Britain came, and all of a sudden, men, old men and women, children, we started learning forgetting, completely discarding our Nchibidi, our everything concerning us. Mazi, I don't see it as also too sharp. It is a kind of zeal without knowledge. That is the way, privately, you know, the way I am analyzing it, I am seeing it. But in their own, yes, your own development, no matter how superior it is, yes. But we don't have to push our people into this as quick as possible. Otherwise, it will bring confusion, which is also what we are suffering in our land. That's it. But the other people, the North, they still retain their their roots, the original civilization, which is what Ahmad Bello also fought for. Because he want them to go into it little by little, not forgetting their own thing, not forgetting their past. But our own is, we dropped everything concerning us and followed Britain. And they see us, oh, we are sharp, we are learning, we are reading this. And today, who is suffering it? That is why I also say leadership must be about sound judgment, not about what you are going to get now or the people you're going to get now. What of generations coming? You analyze critically. Mazi, please continue. I'm sorry for the interference. Go on.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we'll talk more on this, because in the northern sector, what happened was within their culture, you can't go any faster than they did, because it's more conservative and theocratic. Means their religion, everything is a way of life. It's not just go to Sunday and so on. This is a way of life, and they're conservative. You can't change anything. Those on top remain on top forever. There's no change. There's no flexibility. So those in the top, their children will go to school, and those who are not on top, they just remain the way they are. The people in the East are slightly different, because it's like you're the king of your own castle. If there's anything threatening the village, people come together and they discuss the way forward. You nominate someone to go and represent them, that person. When they finish, that ends there. In other words, you don't have anyone leading you. It's not that they don't have leaders, it's just that they rather delegate and people represent them. So they are democratic in nature. It's an inbuilt. You can't tell them not to study. So when an opportunity to read and write came, it's like a liberating thing for them. It's something that was inbuilt in them to exploit. And they grabbed it with both hands.
Mazi, sorry, when you say read and write in European system, European style, because
I'm coming.
Yes,
I'm coming. Yeah, you read and write because it was the way is actually what saved Biafra. That ability to read and write and understand the modernity. If we didn't have our scientists, the war would have been over in 48 hours, 72 hours. So whilst you're condemning it from your own viewpoint about why we rushed in headlong into the modernity, the British way of doing things, it saved our lives because we had more graduates. I keep saying this. We had more graduates than the whole of Black Africa put together at the time of 60s. Okay, so because of we have engineers, scientists, doctors, lawyers, and so on. If you look at class of 67 to 1970, they're the finest, and they're the first generation that have gone to colleges and universities. They were sending people abroad. You had a nuclear physicist who helped you to design weapons in the 60s, and they built their own rockets with guided missiles. Now, if you think those were not useful for our survival, then I beg to differ, because the people you're fighting, the only reason
I'm sorry. Just like, yes, I understand what you're saying. I understand everything. But also, because I don't think that we continue putting it in this way completely. Because when you talk about reading and writing, as if we are not people, we didn't have any writing before even the advent of the white people. What I'm trying to say is that the way we did auto turn round, about turn, embracing completely, what you call like the war or the Biafran war. Yes, our people developed. We have our scientists. Because we are natural scientists, Biafrans. Now, I also take you back. They could make warriors. They were not having so-called modern, what you refer to as modern warfare, but they were able to resist Britain for 31 years with our own system. So, sometimes I don't completely agree that, it's them that without what you call modern, because if we develop our own system, it will be modern. So that's what I'm trying to say, and that is what Ahmad Bello saw. If he changes his people immediately, there will be backlash. We are having backlash today because of all these things, and we have problems of leaders. I'm telling you, in Igbo, in Biafra, we are that one is we have problems of leaders with their sometimes non-analytical views of issues before taking decisions. So when you talk about resistance or what happened within the 30 months of fighting, yes, 31 years of resistance against Britain, we caused a lot of damage to Britain, economic warriors, when you studied it, with our own system also. So that is what I'm saying. Allowing people overall to turn around immediately and embrace foreign things, saying that it is modern. Mazi, it has backlash. It have tremendous backlash to the people. That is my point. Mazi, go on, please. I will not interject again. Go on.
Well done. If you look at his CBD writings, is something we could have preserved, but the way it was set up is for the secret societies which held it. Nobody else was supposed to know it. But going back to the North, they had a way of preserving their culture, and as a result, it was a bit slower for them, too conservative, and the British loved it because they stay in that system and be told what to do, nursing them and so on. But if I'm to choose which one I rather do, I rather be independent thinking, so I can make up and find things out for myself. If the war hadn't come, the eastern region would have been industrialized because there's some people abroad who learn how to manage, who learn born GK. They had a revolution in the way their country was set up, so much so they had the world fastest growing economy in the 60s, 9% on annual days. And if they left them to the 72, 74, the next cycle, they would have been industrialized. Now, I'm not going to accept that they should have taken another century to emerge from where they were before as the only way we're going to preserve our culture. No, our culture can be preserved with what we learn from abroad and then help it to build our culture, because we have people who understand, as I said, the class of 67 to 70, everywhere you look, you have outstanding individuals. People like, what's his name? The one who Francis Ibiam, yeah? He was the world Council of Judges, Vice President or the President, who helped to mobilize food for Biafran children, of which I'm one of them. So you need people of that caliber to compete at the world stage. You had World Council of, world class judges, like the person who was swearing with Jukuin, isn't Banefo. Yeah, if you look everywhere, you have people of world class standards. I'm not going to accept that, we should have not developed those people, because without them, we would have been completely destroyed. So that is my take on it. And as I said, it depends on how you look at it. It doesn't stop us as a people in preserving our culture, but it shouldn't stop us developing either. And those who rushed back from the north with all these wounds and injuries to their nose, to their mouth, to their hands, and they were sutured back by surgeons at any good teaching hospital. Okay, so there is a lot to be said for the advancement and development that was in the eastern region at the time. So if the other parts chose to remain slow, then that is their problem. I don't think Biafra should. And if you read the Ahera Declaration, we were going to develop. We weren't going to hold and wait for everybody else to reach a certain standard. After all, how did the rest of the world in advance? So those are my views, I must say. And I understand what you're saying. If I may do the closing, we'll have time to develop these ideas further. So Biafra has been declared after all the suffering that our people went through. And Ojukwu was only 32 or 33 when all this was happening. I don't think you've got any more leader like Ojukwu ever since in our Biafra land. And he was highly educated. Okay, so that's another example. So without his input, Aburi would not have been set out, everything clearly defined. And when they reneged against it, he mobilized his people to the best of his ability. And if people didn't look up to Ojukwu with what he did, I don't think it would have lasted a week, let alone 30 months. Okay, so I have my respect for people like him and what they were able to achieve in saving lives because of their special talents. So in summary for today, Aburi taught us a big lesson. You cannot trust, the so-called erstwhile compatriots who slaughtered your people in the trenches, not in the trenches, in the barracks, and pretend nothing happened. They've not apologized, and I don't expect them to apologize in the future. But they don't expect us, therefore, to be, their brothers and sisters in arms, and that is really what the Aburi was about. So going forward, we as a people need to understand that what has happened to us need a thorough review, a thorough understanding of how best is there anything we could have done differently? These are the questions we should be asking ourselves. Is there any way, people like Ojukwu and saying, what could they have done differently to prevent the calamity we had? If, for example, we are to have a new setting whereby we have a conference of how do Biafrans live from now on, should we just go into Nigeria and have a meeting and leave it as that? Clearly, the history says you need to record the proceedings. You need to make sure UN knows about it, AU knows about it, EU know about it, Russian Federation know about it, the BRICS know about it, and also people, so that the people you are having the discussion and meeting with, they're going to turn around and say, oh, this is not what we discussed. So we need to learn from our mistakes and learn what has happened. Because Ojukwu walked into Aburi and said, I want this minute to be sent to Organization of African Unity. They said, no. We want to keep it as brothers. And so, well, let's record it then. If it wasn't recorded, it would have been their words against his. And there's only 1 out of 8 of them. Can you imagine? So, being wise now after the event is one thing. But we need to also learn from the mistakes where they were made and see how we can obviate them in the future. And because this by no means over. And there are those who are supposed to rule us who are not doing their jobs. But we need to be wiser than the generation have gone before, and so that their efforts will not be in vain. So, but I could not help but recall when Biafra was, when Biafra was declared, how happy everybody was because they could taste freedom, and they sustained that freedom right to the last minute because their country was free and they're willing to die for it. So that makes them literally indestructible. And the music that they played, showing that they thank Ojukwu that Biafra has come to stay. And it's not an Igbo language, but it's one of the Biafran languages. So if you play that one, Biafra Bolate. So if you listen to it and the joy in the people's face when Biafra was declared, is absolutely remarkable. So we're going to continue learning from what has happened in the past and hope to apply it in the future to save the lives of the people. And that's what BEAT is about. Thank you very much. I look forward to taking questions next meeting. And so we can continue to explore all the knowledge we have and add more to it using BEAT as a way of disseminating the Biafran message worldwide. Thank you very much.
There were Mazi. Thank you very much. And we must continue. Biafrans and lovers of freedom. This is where we are going to end the program for today. And as you have heard, on Sunday will be the last day, the 26th, the same time, 7:30 p.m. Biafra time. So you can ask questions. But as I continue saying, we learn from history. History guides us. What we are suffering today as a people, it is not by coincidence. Never. It is not by, divine or anything. I don't believe that. It is mistakes that occurred right from the inception of or creation of this Nigeria, this entity called One Nigeria. So we have to learn from our mistakes. Mistakes we have made. Terrible mistakes that we are suffering today. I am telling you. Terrible ones. One, because of sound judgments it counts very much. You can have a people, talented people like Biafrans, but without adequate organization stemming up from good judgment, I am telling you, all those talents will turn into anarchy, as we are seeing today. Just anarchy. Development is about organization, number one. That is the most important thing. That is why even in IPOB, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu continues stressing that in IPOB, it is command and control, discipline. Discipline. Without discipline, you cannot even practice a real democracy. Discipline. If you plant a flower, nice, good-looking flowers, without trimming them, they become wild. And they will be ugly to behold. That is, without organization, our talents amounts to nothing. That is what we are experiencing today. The ability to do that and under one umbrella, at least. Now we continue moving as a people, even if it is slow. You see, that's why some people, they fall apart. Because they feel that, DOS is slow, nothing going on. They want to jump wagon where they feel that things are happening. And they enter into criminality. That is indiscipline. And that is one of the diseases we are suffering. Once you are in charge of, you are, the leader of a group of people, I mean millions of people. It's not the way you as an individual looks at things, the leadership looks at it. No. They consider things holistically. There are ways, there are things they will see, you will not see it. You are not seeing it. And when they say, stop, everybody stop. Let us gather and do head count. That time you see people say, no, we are too slow, this and that. Oh, these are problems that we have, or we have been having right from time. But IPOB came to correct all these problems. Otherwise, if all these things are not corrected, all these mistakes, it will continue haunting us, haunting our future generations forever. And we continue crying and suffering, filled up with talents, but suffering. So that is why we always, this Biafra awareness, Biafra education awareness dissemination, championed by Mazi Dr. Justice Ukachi Lois, is bringing history to our doorsteps. What happened to us, so that we learn. We have many things to learn. So thank you for listening. Biafra remains our ideology, our religion, everything. And here on Radio Biafra is where we worship. Thank you for listening. From me, Mazi Jonathan Chinedu, it is simply good evening.